Mr. Beaumont is in front of the post office. He's doing what he's supposed to, but there's all of these, I'm using air quotes here, random wandering people.
Yeah.
I'm just minding my own business.
Well, wasn't like, I'm sure, actually, let's just keep going because this is my favorite. It's about to come.
Oh, yeah.
The phone calls.
Yes, so of course he's standing outside.
Yeah.
Somebody calls. He's outside the post office. Somebody calls the post office. It's a male voice with a Australian accent. He talks to this postal worker. It's a woman. She goes and says, "I need you to take a message outside." She takes a message outside to Mr. Beaumont saying that they're delayed and they're on their way. Okay, everything seems fine so far. Not too long after that, there's a telegraph comes through. Somehow the message is conveyed again to Mr. Beaumont that they're on their way. Mm-hmm. And then after that, another message is brought to him saying that Grant is sick, and so they can't be there till after lunch. And of course, Mr. Beaumont's he's hanging out. He's gonna wait, and
they're his kids.
Of course, they're his kids.
Yeah.
And he gets there at 8:50 in the morning. He gives up at 3:00. I think he kind of figured out he's being strung along.
Like a 7-hour day.
Yeah. He's had enough, and so obviously he didn't get his kids.
What I don't really get about this is, didn't the police? I mean, it's easy to find out what telegraph office the telegrams originated in.
Don't ask me, brother.
Yeah.
I don't know why that didn't happen.
Why they didn't follow up on that?
Well, and
I mean, they must have.
Well, and there's some follow up, but it doesn't seem like at that time. I don't know why.
I don't know. I kind of feels
weird.
It feels a bit like there was so much going on, that suddenly it was just like nobody knew what to do anymore. Nobody knew how to do their job anymore.
Yeah.
It was like, well, we don't want to blow our cover, so we're not gonna go. As soon as the telegram guy, we're not going to follow the telegram guy back in because obviously he's being watched. So,
or potentially.
And by that point, I don't think you keep a necessarily great record of like this person at exactly this time said this telegraph saying this.
But you can talk to the people that work in the office. I mean, you go in there, you write down text, they send text.
Yeah.
So somebody's going to interact with you. And
yeah, of course. I just think that like if you follow up a couple days later, especially if you happened to send it from a really populous area, like.
Well, here's the thing too, and of course, I don't want to give away the ending, but more than one telegram was sent. Mm-hmm. So after the first telegram, if the cops had just gone to the telegraph office that received the telegram, mm-hmm. and then found out from them where it originated.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is that like I think they still thought their cover was like. They were still.
They didn't realize how screwed they were.
I think they thought they were still being really sneaky, and they were like, "But if I follow this guy into his office, I'm not being sneaky anymore." Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like they still thought they had it, mm-hmm. versus like, a couple days later they realized like, oh, our cover was super blown immediately. We were acting like dummies.
Yeah, it was. But yeah,
it's okay to go question this person.
Yeah, if that had the telegrams, if the letters and everything had been for real. Then that really, in my mind, represents a huge lost opportunity.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. I think that one of the biggest problems in this entire case, as with so many cases we cover, is the fact that it was just totally bungled by the police.
A little bit, yeah.
But Steve has more things to say.
I do.
Let's talk a little bit more about
It's all right.
this, yeah.
I'm just staring at you two, watching you blabber on.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the fact that several telegrams come through. One of them says they're going to be late. The other one tells Mr. Beaumont to go wait across the street.
This is my favorite part. I just, that is seriously my favorite part of this entire story, because I just imagine it was like, okay, you've got the image. You have a bunch of people in, NCIS, right? They're doing a stakeout. Or The Wire. They're doing a stakeout, and it's like, no, I'm just a homeless person. I'm asking for money. Oh, I'm a person giving you money. It's
I'm
like all of these
shrubbery.
Staged. Yeah, right? But
and then
if
they
your
all
target moves,
street.
right? So, Mr. Beaumont gets the thing, and he's like, oh, okay, I'll go across the street. He goes across the street, and 2 seconds later, everybody else is around him again, too. It's the same exact tableau, just on the other side. That mental image is one of my favorite all-time mental images.
Kind of Keystone Cops here, but yeah.
So Mr. Beaumont stays in that town.
Yeah.
For a total, he waits outside the post office for a total of 3 days, hoping that something's going to happen, and it doesn't. But more letters are sent to the family's home. There are 3 letters that are sent in 2 envelopes, and one of them was postmarked from the 29th of February.
From that same city, town,
yep,
right?
same town, and would have been on the same. The other one was from the same day, but
It arrived the same day?
it was posted on the same day. Is the way that it's written.
Okay.
Now, I'm assuming that that means that the post office handled it and stamped it that day, but it's never been said where it came from.
Okay.
I would presume that it was the same town, but maybe whoever was sending them went to the next town and it went through their post system. I can't clarify that.
Sure. Okay.
But the letters, they show up, and again, there's a letter from Jane, and in that letter...
Well, there's 2 letters from
Well,
Jane,
yeah,
right?
there's the letter from Jane, and it's signed. It's still in that weird handwriting that's not quite Jane's handwriting, but it's still there. And then there's what's called the disguised handwriting, which I think means I'm writing with my left hand, so you can't tell who I am. Kind of disguised handwriting. It's really terrible, I'm guessing. But it's signed The Man. And it says that because the Beaumonts didn't play ball, the kids aren't going to be returned. And it's kind of a brutal thing. And the whole thing is brutal to me because it turns out, as I think everybody's figured out at this point, the whole thing was a hoax.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Because that was 68. In 1981, they looked at the letters again, but they didn't get much out of them. And then 11 years later, they had better ways to fingerprint things, and they were able to pull prints off of them, and they found the guy who wrote the letter. And he was a kid when he did it.
17, right?
He was a 17-year-old kid who thought it was funny, and he did this, but the whole time after, he felt, as he matured, he was really regretful of the whole thing and realized
I can
what
imagine.
a jackass move it was.
Yeah.
But so the letters are weird and they're alluded to, but the whole thing turns out to be for naught.
Yeah.
Yeah, too bad. All right, so time goes by. This what I'm going to talk about now happened before the letters arrived. This is later in the year of 1966. This was obviously a huge deal, and it got worldwide publicity.
Right.
And so a Dutch parapsychologist, or a psychic, who was named Gerard Croiset, offered his services. He was actually sometimes consulted by Dutch police in murder and missing person cases, and
He was the girl with the dragon tattoo?
yeah.
Okay.
Was
He had crazy hair.
okay, he had crazy hair. There's a picture.
The requisite crazy hair.
Oh yeah, have you seen this picture?
It wasn't
yeah.
as crazy as I thought it was going to be, but it was still pretty crazy.
It was pretty crazy. Yeah.
It wasn't as crazy as I
Yeah. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, he's good. There is
Is that a bald joke?
No?
Yeah. There is a Wikipedia page devoted to this guy. You can look at the picture yourself. His name is actually it's spelled like Gerard Croiset, but the
It's
Dutch.
French.
Yeah. So Gerard Croiset, and so
No, they should have to figure out how to spell it.
They should have to figure out how to pronounce it.
if-
What's wrong with these
If
people?
they insist we pronounce things correctly,
Yeah,
they should figure out how to spell things from our pronunciation.
that's right.
They're screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ruined
Eddie,
forever.
Okay, so
Time to invade.
So did he was involved in this case then?
He did get involved, yeah. His career, by the way, was kind of a mixed bag. He actually did occasionally succeed in giving police clues that helped to solve the occasional murder, missing person, or missing body, or
Do you think
whatever.
it's like we could give helpful clues to people?
I have
Yeah.
2 feelings. One is living, the other is dead.
Yeah.
Who is Tom? Oh, you mean Tim? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're stealing straight from Facebook.
Yeah. But Croiset seemed to fail more often than he succeeded.
Not
but-
surprisingly.
Yeah, but hey, what the hell? They were desperate. They sent him photos and other information about the disappearance, and he contacted them and gave them some clues about his feeling about where the kids might be, where their bodies might be. And of course, all those were checked out, and none of them panned out. So eventually, Jose decided it would be better if he went to Australia.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And, you know,
Psychic feelings better closer.
Oh, yeah.
Local read.
Yeah,
Yeah.
boots on the ground and all that stuff.
Yeah, all that.
and his travel expenses were paid by a rich Australian businessman who had taken an interest in the case.
Who is hilarious looking, by the way.
Yeah.
They all are.
Yeah.
Oh, he wears great suits and funny hats.
Yeah.
I've seen
What
the
was his name
footage
again?
of him.
Oh,
Oh, you had to ask me that.
sorry.
I knew it until then, but he is the funniest looking guy ever.
okay. Well. Anyway, it's very generous of him to treat Quase to a free trip to Australia. The Beaumonts, for their part, didn't actually want to meet with Quase because they thought he was a quack. They didn't believe in psychics. And they also really were not happy about the media feeding frenzy that was taking place. Because,
Understandably, yeah.
Yeah, the word got out that he was coming, and everybody got all excited. He did succeed in actually meeting with the Beaumonts before he left Australia, but I don't think they took him too seriously.
No, I don't think either.
Yeah, he kept changing his mind about where they were. And this is before he even arrived in Australia. He kept changing his mind about that. At first, he said they were only half a mile from where they disappeared, maybe in a collapsed stormwater pipe. Then he changed his mind and said that they were in some sand dunes. When he arrived in Australia, which was like November, he walked on the beach and just sort of communed with nature and stuff, and then said that he felt that they were buried under the floor of a warehouse that had recently been constructed. And so he requested that they rip up the concrete floor of the warehouse because the bodies were underneath there. The police were skeptical because they had searched the area thoroughly. At the time the kids disappeared, this was actually a building site, and so they hadn't poured the concrete slab yet. So actually, a likely place to dispose of some bodies. But the police had apparently searched the work site before the concrete slab had been poured, and so they were extremely skeptical. And of course, the building's owner wasn't enthusiastic at all about the idea.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
the person who has a stake in this building.
Oh yeah. They kicked off a big fundraising campaign to raise funds to compensate the owner for the damage that was going to be done. It raised about $40,000. They ripped up the floor and found nothing. And then again, the building was partially demoed in 1996, and the current owner then let the police search the site again, and once again, nothing was found.
And this
Weird.
is they brought in the cadaver dogs.
Yeah.
I remember that because I actually watched some of the footage from that because of course media feeding frenzy, the cameras are all there, and I must have watched 4 different newscasts in a row that were, they had the cadaver dogs in the pits trying to figure things out, but the dogs weren't really getting much of anything.
Weird.
Yeah, well,
Like there may not have been bodies there.
maybe their bodies weren't there.
Weird.
Actually, Jose later told somebody that he actually believed that the children were buried in the foundation of a block of apartments. But then he didn't say anything about that because he didn't want to upset the people living in the apartment. So he decided on the warehouse instead.
Sure.
That reeks of manure.
Makes sense.
Yeah, It's kind of like that whole. Forget it. But he left Australia. Many people thought that he was just a fraud, and
Weird.
And he never came back.
Yeah. And also, there's another psychic who's kind of inserted himself into this case. An Australian guy named Scott Russell Hill, who claims to be a psychic detective, and he's written a book called Psychic Detective. Yeah, I know.
That's a good name.
I know.
I don't know why I didn't think of that.
He says that he knew the Beaumont kids when he was young, and I didn't bother to check that out. I'll take him at his word.
Sure.
Yeah. He also said that he had an encounter with Grant's ghost. Remember, Grant was the little 4-year-old boy.
I'll also take that at face value.
Yeah. So he had an
Just
encounter with
leave him
Grant's
on that.
ghost,
Yeah.
and he says he's working on the case, but so far, nothing. Yeah.
That's the only part of this that I believe.
Yeah, I know.
So far, nothing.
Yeah, so the psychics didn't really pan out, alas.
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about next? Suspects, maybe?
Yeah. You guys were there.
I want to talk about suspects.
Suspects.
Wow, that didn't take long.
No, not at all. I guess we'll start because suspects are theories at this point. Right?
Yeah,
It's
we
theories.
don't. The theories are who
Theories
done
are-
it.
or
Yeah.
who done it.
Yeah, there are about
Couple
5 suspects.
Really interesting ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first one is a gentleman, if you can call him that, by the name of Bevan Spencer von Einem. And I'm just going to preface this by saying, sometimes when you research this kind of mystery, you end up having to research a person who is so horrible that you literally do not know where to start. And I think Steve felt this way too.
A little bit.
When researching his suspect. So I'm going to go ahead and say, of all of the real-life confirmed killers we've ever talked about in the show, this guy, in my book, takes the cake. Every single time I watched a number of news pieces about this guy, and every single time they referred to him as the sadistic Von Eyman. That's his title. Like, that's his name now. And he is currently alive and currently in jail.
Well, if he's part of what he's alleged to be part of, then it's super.
He's definitely part of what he's alleged to be part of. I'm going to go on the record and say he's absolutely part of that, and we'll talk about that
okay.
in a second.
But an evil guy.
He's not a nice guy.
No, I wasn't trying to defend this upright citizen.
No.
I mean, he's in jail for a long time for a reason.
Yeah, but guess what? Possibility of parole.
I still don't get that.
Yeah. Anyways.
Way to go, Australia.
Einem was born in 1945 or maybe 1959. I'm not sure. To be honest with you, when you Google him, right, there's usually that like preview of the Wikipedia page. And on the preview it says, born in 1959, and you click through and it's like, born in 1945. So I literally don't know what year he was born in.
I think 45.
I think so too. That's what I'm going with for all of the like ages that we're going to refer to in a little bit. But just so you guys know, there is that discrepancy on the internet somewhere.
I'm going to say that was a Wikipedia update that then got cached by Google.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. So he was born in Australia.
Because, if he was a suspect and he was born in 59, he would have been 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big
probably not that.
Yeah.
His Wikipedia and Murderpedia page list his number of victims as 1 to 5 plus.
Probably dozens.
He is currently serving life with possibility of parole somehow, like we said.
I kind of suspect he's never going to get parole.
He's definitely not. But the fact that it's a possibility is interesting to me. To understand why he's so horrible, you have to learn about something that happened in the late 70s to mid 80s in Adelaide called the Family Murders.
Who in the hell named this?
The media, actually.
Of course it was.
Yeah, locally, it's a group of suspects that was called the Family, and police are adamantly against calling them that because they feel like it gives legitimacy to a group of people who did some really bad stuff but aren't affiliated with each other anymore. I don't know how the police choose to refer to these guys, so unfortunately we're going to refer to them as the Family.
Now, how well documented is the existence of this group?
It's, from what I have read, it's internally confirmed within the police. The problem you run into, shockingly, put on your tin hats, is that everybody but Einem is allegedly either a really successful business person or connected to the politics.
High member of society.
Yeah.
Politicians, judges,
Yeah. Or just, rich business people.
So they've got the connections to stay out of trouble. So
it's actually, when you research about these, they're referred to as Einem, and then you've got suspect 1, 2, and 3. They're not named, even though the police are pretty sure they knew who these people are.
Okay.
How do psychotic perverts like this find each other?
I don't know.
And seriously,
it's interesting, isn't it?
You just walk up to a guy in a bar and say, "Hey, what are you into?" And the guy says,
they just go meet each other on Perv Book.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, in the 70s.
Yeah.
But I've always wondered about like previously, we talked about Leonard Lake and Charles Ing, and
how do they find each other?
They met in prison, though.
Was it prison?
But those two met in prison.
But it's how did they? One of them said, "Hey, I'd really like just torturing and raping and murder. How about you, dude?"
No, I don't know how, and I especially don't know how these guys all met, but they did. And together they are suspected to be responsible for at least 5, but probably 12 or 13 murders.
And all kids, right?
All Almost
Young.
all. Young
Younger.
people. The oldest one is 25, but that's an outlier. The bulk of them are under 17.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, all but one of the, 5, definitely attributed to these people murders are unsolved. So that means that we know what we're doing next October.
Yeah.
Yay, just kidding. The one that has been solved is the one that von Einen is serving life for. The murder of Richard Kelvin in 1983. I don't want to go too deep into this.
Yeah, this is a pretty vicious crime.
It's really, really vicious. But Richard was a 15-year-old boy who was kidnapped, raped, sodomized, and tortured for 5 weeks until his death caused by massive blood loss due to an anal injury. His body was dumped on July 24th, 1983, unceremoniously and really poorly hidden right next to an airfield.
And they found a lot of drugs in the system.
They found
right?
a quote massive amount of what they call hypnotic drugs, which are sedatives, and it was 4 different kinds.
And this is what did von Einem in.
Yeah, they did a search of his house. Actually, they did a search of people who had been prescribed these drugs, and a Mr. B. von Einem.
Yeah.
Can't say the name today, I'm sorry. Came up, and the police knew this name because he had been questioned in conjunction with...
Yeah. Apparently, his prescription was for a massive amount of these drugs, too, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Wasn't it for
I think...
a couple of thousand pills or something
Yeah, over
like that?
the course of 2 years that he had been prescribed 8,000...
Michael Jackson level dosages of sleeping
of
aids.
all 4 of these.
Yeah.
But he was found to be in possession of 2 of the drugs that were found in Richard's system. So the police went to his house. They said, hey, can we search your house? And he said, yeah, totally. And they found one of the drugs.
Really stupid or really cocky.
Well, they found one of the drugs in his medicine cabinet, and he said, oh, it's prescribed to me. And they said, okay. Are there any other drugs in the house? And he said, no. And they pulled a wardrobe away from the door, and there was another bottle of one of the other kinds of medicines that was found in Richard's system. And they said, is this yours? And he said, oh, yeah, but I don't take it a whole lot.
I just use that to drug young boys before I rape them.
Anyway, it's actually kind of God, I hate to say this, it's kind of an interesting case. If you want to read about it, there's a lot of really good reading out there on this. But
there was a lot of other physical evidence in his bedroom also, too. So luckily, frankly, I think for considering the severity of the crime, they should have strung him up myself.
Yes. So the case was really, really strong against him. He had been acting kind of suspicious the entire time. So he was eventually sentenced to life in prison with a 24-year no parole term. That was immediately appealed and amended to a 36-year no parole term. The term was up in 2007. But the at-time premier of South Australia vowed that he would not leave jail alive.
Yeah.
If it's a 36-year no parole term and he went to jail in 83, that 93, 03, 13, did he go to jail that year?
Yeah.
13, that means
but it was
2019.
Sorry, I guess I didn't mention, they push up parole for things like good behavior.
Okay. Got it. I was the math wasn't working for me
I
for
hear
a second
you.
there.
And I think that it's possible that I got that number from the 24-year no parole term, not the 36. But he was up for parole.
Either way, he was up for parole and it didn't go through.
It didn't go through. It will never go through.
Oh, I'm sure it won't. No.
Yeah. Anyhow, the family is likely responsible for the other 4 murders, starting in 1979, of mostly teenage boys. All 5 of them died due to massive blood loss caused by an anal injury. Except for one of them was undetermined because a farmer had set the body on fire on accident.
Bad tractor.
So
the thing about von Einem, didn't the jury deliberate for all of 3 hours before?
No, it was actually 7.5 hours.
Oh, was it 7.5?
Yeah, it was
okay.
fairly long.
I've got it confused with somebody else.
Yeah. So, but why is von Einem considered a suspect in the Beaumont children disappearance? Good question. Neither of you asked it. shame on you.
Well, I was thinking it.
I was letting our listeners ask it.
Well, I mean, his MO doesn't necessarily match
It doesn't.
the Beaumont children,
Not
right?
at all. He always nabbed them one by one.
Yeah, so the allegation actually stems in part from some footage that was taken by a local news station at the time when the initial search was mounted for the Beaumont children. And in one clip, the police are searching a storm drain, and there are a lot of onlookers. And one of the men looking on looks almost exactly like Einem at like 20 or 21, which is how old he would have been at the time. Mm-hmm. And they actually found an image of him from like 4 or 5 years later when he was 25. And then for reference, they darkened his hair a little bit and gave him similar sunglasses. So I know our listeners don't have this image, but if you will turn the page,
They do look rather similar.
it's a startling similarity.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's a good comparison.
I would say that it's not. He doesn't necessarily look like an everyday Joe. You know, when I look at this
But
image,
he doesn't look like Joe at all.
No.
Not really.
I mean, you know, when you look at that image, you're not immediately like, well, that could be anybody.
Yes.
They look very similar.
He's got a very
Distinct features.
he's got a distinct jawline and chin. He's got a real jutting chin. Yeah. Although the fact that he was just sort of hanging around while the police were doing their thing doesn't necessarily prove much of anything.
Certainly not, but
Yeah.
but it would place him at the area at that time.
Oh yeah.
Apparently, I read some reports that one of the men standing next to him also looks very similar to another one of the alleged family members.
Is that the old man?
Well, I don't know.
The older. Oh, it's just because the people who are standing there, they're kind of in pairs.
Mm-hmm.
There's one pair, and then there's Von Einem and this other guy, and I assumed that they were talking about the guy. Okay.
So the other part of this is the statements by a witness, which was just referred to as Mr. B, and he's deemed a highly credible witness for almost everything. And he gave a lot of information that led to the arrest and conviction of Von Einem. Allegedly, he once told Mr. B that he had several years ago taken 3 children from a beach, taken them home, and, quote, conducted experiments on them. He said that he had performed a surgery on each of them, then, quote, connected them together.
And I really hope it just means he tied them together, not surgically attached them to
I don't
one
think
another.
that's what it means.
I kind of think he surgically attached
them to
yeah.
one another, yeah. And one of the children had died during the operation, so he killed the other 2 and then dumped their bodies in the bushlands.
Nice guy.
Home operation, yeah, I can see how
weird.
that would kill somebody.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And apparently, actually, he did live in the area and did go to Glenelg Beach to perv on the changing room a lot. And I guess it's possible. I don't know a whole lot about psychopathic MOs and if they age or change at all. But if he were a young man targeting a younger demographic and that demographic aged with him,
That's not something I've ever heard of.
I don't know. I don't know
It's
if
either
it's like
you're
if
into
there's
young
this-
boys, you're into young men, or you just kill people at random.
Right.
Like I've never heard of anything where it's he was a young man, so he was into children, and then when he was a middle-aged man, he was into young men and progressing that way.
I guess this
I
is
don't
pure
know.
speculation, but if it were because of some sort of trauma, that it could potentially age with you.
And
But I don't know.
tastes and desires change with time.
Absolutely.
And that
But
goes for
also-
psychos as well as regular
But
people.
also potentially that he, if he was a psycho and was really, his draw was to much younger children, and when he was working alone, he had been targeting younger children, and then he found this group of people that was like, dude, seriously, like 4-year-olds? I don't know, 14-year-olds is like more where it's at. And
Yeah,
he
it's
was
not, it's not cool
yeah.
to rape and kill a 4-year-old, but
Right,
a 14-year-old,
but 14's
hey,
fine.
yeah, that's totally cool.
So I don't know. I guess there's also a possibility of that.
or
kind of
there's
influence.
and this if what we're talking about is correct, he is then exactly who you were speculating about. One of you recently, when we talked about the serial killer, we were just kind of theorizing, the serial killer who continually changed their MO, they didn't actually have an
I'm
MO.
pretty sure you're the one who brought that up, actually.
I don't think that was me.
Yeah,
I think that was one of you. But the point is, this matches
I think
exactly
your MO
that
is changing,
idea.
Steve.
That is a good idea.
It is. It's a good. I mean, it's an interesting point.
I think that personally, if you're targeting, people in the 4 to 9 year old range, there's a couple of good reasons for it, and it's probably it probably is not going to change.
Yeah.
One handy thing about little kids is that they're fairly naive and small and weak, and so
Yes, they're easy to overpower.
It's real.
But
easy
I guess if
yeah.
like